Hi everyone, it's Han here. I'd like to address today something that I've noticed, and I would like to ask for people's help, really, especially men and men who know about the men's rights movements and MGTOW. Now, I am a big fan of MGTOW. Now, it's offensive a lot of the time, and there are many people, followers of MGTOW, who base their arguments on fallacious nonsense, and they can be um, very abrasive, and you can tell their motives are angry. The same with many feminists, they have like this anger motivation. But that doesn't detract from the fact that there are many good points. A lot of good has come out of me watching MGTOW videos. I often listen to Sandman, and he's probably one of the more offensive ones, and especially his followers. But I like to, I like to hear MGTOW's thoughts on female nature and listen to their observations of females, because most men out here in the real world, as you could call it, guys who haven't been red pilled, most of them are not going to give you their honest assessment of you and your behavior, and because they can't see it as well, because they have also been indoctrinated by feminism. And it's helped me. I've read a lot of Paul Elam's work, and it's actually helped me to identify these characteristics in myself and do something about it. And I've made positive changes, and it's really had an influence on how I raise my son and how I treat my son's father and the men around me. And I'm happier for it, and I appreciate the traditional roles, and I appreciate the fact that men and women have different qualities, and I can see that very dark streak in women now, and I really don't want to be like that myself. And and I really appreciate the work that these guys have done in exposing that. So what I was pondering, I mean, I've looked into the feminist movement, and I've done quite a lot of research on how that all came about and the effect that it's had on society. I've already cited some of these guys, like Jan Irvin, Jan. Stefan Molyneux talks about it also. And there's quite a lot of teachings about it. Karen Strone from Girl Rights What also goes into this, and how feminism and the ideology of feminism has spilled into our everyday lives, and even men are now indoctrinated with it too. But I'm not going to go too much into that. And and I found through researching that it was all kind of, you can trace it back to, for want of a better word, the people, the social engineers, the people who control what the narrative is in society. So we have this notion that we're living in a patriarchy and women are still being oppressed. And then when you look into that, you kind of find that it's not really the truth. It's actually the other way around. Actually, men are being repressed in this society, oppressed rather, especially with things to do like with losing their children, and they have no rights there. But again, I digress. So it all seems to come back to this idea of eugenics or population control or weeding out the strong genes in the gene pool. The destruction of the family unit. Again, I'll recommend Jan Irving's teachings about this, and you can also read his stuff online on Gnostic media. Bill Jocelyn also. and there's a lot of information there. It's very complicated. You know, it takes quite a while to go through the info. But this is what I found, that there's a whole underlying agenda there to split up the family unit and make people more reliant upon the state. You know, if you're in your family unit, your little bubble, you're reliant on each other. If the family unit's destroyed, the woman usually becomes more dependent on the state, you know, and the children do too. And the father's kind of pushed out of the picture. I know this doesn't happen in all circumstances, but it's becoming increasingly more common. And I found that the whole idea behind it is to separate families and make us into more of a state-dependent society. Now, naturally, there's been a backlash against this, and I think it appears to be some of the more thoughtful, intelligent, moral men who perhaps have more traditional leanings. They've identified this problem, and this is what it appeared to be. There's a movement of men rising up in a backlash against this gynocentrism, as they call it, or against the feminists and the way that feminism has overtaken society, you know. And MGTOW came around by men basically deciding, well, I'm not. They basically boycott women. Okay, some of them end up getting married or whatever, but a lot of them choose not to date and settle down. Now, what this has done is it's taken a section of the gene pool and rendered it childless. These guys are not going to get married and have children, and they're intelligent guys. The ones who saw this, they're the ones who have been less socially engineered. A lot of the times they've got burnt, you know, and they've kind of come to these conclusions. But I think there's a certain level of intellect or perception there that perhaps other men don't have. And it's almost like the cream, this is arguable, but the cream of the men has been swiped off the top of that gene pool, and they're not going to breed, you know. And that's kind of got me thinking, I mean, is there an agenda behind MGTOW in the same way that there was an agenda behind feminism, and it was very much enforced upon us and orchestrated? Is MGTOW another way of skimming off certain members of the population from the gene pool and stopping them from having children, you know? I believe Paul Elam is very balanced on this. I will recommend him. He was the guy he was at the forefront of the men's rights movement, and obviously he's an advocate of MGTOW. But he has a very balanced view on it, you know, that he says in one of his videos, you know, a lot of men come to the movement, and it's not about them being moral and trying to learn and better themselves and realizing all of this. It's about they're fueled by hatred, you know, they've been fucked over by women and they've had enough. And I understand that, you know, but it's not very helpful in the terms that they're not willing to have a logical discussion. They're followers, so they pick up on the memes, the things that people like Paul Elam say, the guys who are actually thinking about these things and adding to the narrative. There's a whole massive bunch of men who will just regurgitate that and not think for themselves, and it's very much fueled by a we hate women attitude, and you know, that's fine, that's up to them. You know, so there's a separation there. You can't say that all MGTOW men are like this, because there's lots of different flavors of MGTOW, and you know, these men who are kind of waking up to this gynocentric society, there's lots of is on a scale, and there's lots of different motivations. But increasingly, I'm seeing the immoral side of that seems to be getting stronger. So, for example, Sandman's very close to the bone, but I appreciate what he says. Some of it's very funny. But then you get people like, what's his name? Tom Lakis, who's, I've only discovered him today, but he's a radio presenter, and, he's very much about women suck, basically, and then he gets these women calling in and going, it's not all women who are like that, and all of the usual arguments against it. None of them give him a logical argument, and they all come at him from a place of emotion, and they just basically prove his point. It's infuriating to listen to, quite frankly, because it makes us look like idiots, basically, and a lot of women are like that, and I agree, and I've been like that too, and I'm sure I've still got traits of that in me that I'm not seeing. There we go, I'll put it out there. But reading, I listened to that radio show, and then I scrolled down and read the comments, and wow, they're hardcore, and there's this idea of pump and dump. We're not going to settle down with women. Women are evil bitches, fat whores. We'll just pump and dump, so have sex and just leave them. And there's all these buzzwords, and I've heard the pump and dump meme. I've heard that banded around on so many different channels, by either the presenter or the commenters, and I've tried to find out where that phrase came from, and I can't really find it. What I was saying at the beginning, that I would like to ask people in the know for their help on this, is that can anyone direct me to some primary sources where I can see where these phrases were coined? There's pump and dump. There's also Stefan Molyneux. I heard Stefan Molyneux say this first, and then I've subsequently heard from other people the idea of what the 1 to 10 scale of looks. So is she a 9 or a 10? Well, that means that she didn't have to develop any sense of moral compass, and she can just get any guy she wants. So there's that one as well. And there's a few other, I can't think of any more right now, but I'll add them to the description as I come across them. But there's these kind of buzzwords and ideas that I'd never heard of. It's like a whole new language. It's like a whole culture. And the same with any movement, where there's kind of a consensus of language and these private uses of terminology and jargon. Jargon is the word I'm looking for. It's always very suspicious, because with a lot of movements, you can always trace them back to the social engineers, the people who've put these movements on us to manipulate society. And I've been wondering this for a while with MGTOW, but it kind of came to a head today. I'm seeing the same language being used, and these little buzzwords, and there are men who have kind of stepped out of the picture, and they are bringing the narrative along, but most of them now are stuck in this kind of meme cycle of rhetoric, and they don't seem to be questioning where these beliefs and ideologies are coming from. And it's the same thing that happened with feminism, women and guys who buy into it too. They're kind of stuck in this rhetoric bubble now. There's no sort of new thought going on. Oh, there is, but it's very extreme and ugly when it comes to feminism, any of the new thought that comes out of that. But mainly, 9 times out of 10, it's just like, yeah, women are oppressed, we live in a patriarchy. People are just kind of repeating this to themselves and to each other, and there's no sort of real analysis going on. you know, and it's had such a detrimental effect on society. And again, in terms of the family unit, you know, and it appears to me that that's exactly what MGTOW is doing. Now, I'm not saying that I don't understand the fact that guys would stand up and fight against this. I get that, and I appreciate it, and I'm glad they're doing it, and I'm so glad for what I've learned. You know, that just to have guys sort of say, look, you're not a princess, and you're not oppressed, and we think you're an idiot, basically. That's I really appreciate that. I know a lot of women don't, but I do. I care about morals. I care about virtue. I care about knowing the truth about things, even if it hurts. I've been through life experiences that have made me love the truth more than I love myself. And that's not, I'm not boasting, but I know that I didn't used to be like that. Maybe to a certain extent, but I don't shy away from hearing the truth and having things exposed to me just because it hurts my feelings, you know. But anyway, I'll discuss that inside another video. And I've observed that there are people like that in the world who truth and morality is more important to them than anything else, basically. And I think that's a very it's a very noble trait to have. And some people, I guess, are born that way, and I think others are made that way. You know, for myself, I'm not a mainstream Christian, but I do consider myself a Christian because I see the truth in the teachings in the Bible. Not all of it, and I believe that book has been manipulated and used as a weapon. But there's a lot of stuff in there that I appreciate, and I think that truly good people kind of have their morals based on that as well, especially stuff like do unto others as you would have done unto you. That's a really important principle, you know. And I saw that in the MGTOW movement, you know. Well, why should men have their children ripped away from them after the females are the ones who initiate most of divorces, you know? And again, it's that underlying principle of, yeah, why, if that's not good enough for you, why are you treating us men like that? And that's what I really appreciated about it. But now what's happening is you've got men involved in this movement who don't care about truth and who are not moral, okay? So their arguments may be correct to a certain extent, but their motives are warped. So again, you're just getting another movement that's full of low moral, kind of selfish people. And there's a big culture within MGTOW of promoting bad behavior and immorality, this pump and dump thing, you know. And I'll keep going back to it. There are guys within MGTOW who distance themselves from that. They're not, you know, they are truly moral men. But I'm talking about the ones who are immoral. There's this kind of culture of, it's like a fraternity kind of culture that's going on, you know, where they're ribbing each other and they're in competition with each other. You know, well, I like to sleep with women who I find really attractive, and then I just fuck them off, and you know, and then you'll get another guy chiming in, yeah, you know, they're only good for one thing, this, that. I mean, this is the stereotype that I think feminism has propagated. And I really don't believe that men are like that. But now I'm seeing that actually some of them really are. And again, that's fine, you know, whatever. But I really would like to open up the discussion about where's MGTOW come from? Is it another weapon to be used against us to make sure that people don't reproduce? I'd really like to find out where this terminology came from and where the ideology originated. And I'd like to invite somebody to do a video with me and have a discussion about it, you know. And I definitely want to be corrected on things that I'm wrong about. But I'm not interested in ad hominem attacks. I'm not interested in hearing about, well, the reason I don't understand this is because I'm female and I don't want to understand it because I'm inherently evil. You know, I'm not interested in hearing that. If that's the truth and you can prove it, then fair enough. But you know, and we can discuss that, but I'd rather have a kind of logical discussion with somebody about it because I truly do want to learn. I think that's all for now. Yeah, so if there are any MGTOWs listening, you know, leave a comment and let's open up a dialogue. And if you can provide me with the information that I asked for, I'd really appreciate that. So thanks for listening.